Forgive like Jesus or be tortured by Satan. That is chapter 6 in my book, Freedom to Live Like Jesus. Sounds incredibly harsh, but it's incredibly true. If you have unforgiveness in your life and bitterness toward people that have hurt and sinned against you in your past, and you choose not to forgive them, it's like drinking poison and expecting them to die. But what's really happening are our insides, our psyche, our thought process, our heart, everything within us, our spirit is dying because we have bitterness and anger when God has forgiven us of all of our sin, which is far worse than being sinned against. He demands and commands that we forgive others. That is chapter 6 in my book, Freedom to Live Like Jesus. It's on Amazon. I want to encourage you to get it. Again, it sounds very difficult, but when we choose to not forgive others of sins against us from our past or even currently, we are telling God that we refuse to forgive people, but yet we expect him to forgive us of our sin. And when we do that, God allows the enemy to come in and torture us, according to Matthew chapter 18, which I'm going to cover on my podcast, Mountain Preacher in Jesus, right now. When we refuse to do that, the enemy is allowed to come in and wreak havoc in our life. How does he do that? He does that through guilt, more shame, more condemnation. Those things just continue to build and build and build. And we have anxiety attacks. We have bipolar disorders. We have depression. We have all sorts of things. And then we have not only spiritual things that affect us in things that happen in our mind that affect us, but also physically. The medical field, just in the last couple decades, have proved overwhelmingly when we have bitterness and anger and unforgiveness in our life, it greatly affects us physically, even to the point of death sometimes, because our heart is so broken. But yet God says, if you forgive, you'll be free from that bitterness and free from that poison. So chapter 6 of Freedom to Live Like Jesus is coming up on the next podcast. Mountain Preacher in Jesus.